this is Michael with Night of Music, and I wanted to kind of outline what I do in these presentations at these large apartment complexes so that you get an idea of what I'll be doing. Again, it's a show called A Night of Music, and it's a musical recital slash kind of lecture about the benefits of music, and I call it A Night of Music, Empower Your Science Mind and Awaken Your Creative Spirit. So the first thing I do, obviously, is to thank the people for coming out and watching this event, and a nod to the sponsors for giving me the opportunity to put this event on, but also to give gift certificates out to the attendees. And then also thanking the management team for allowing me to put on the show. So the main purpose of this event is to really inspire the general public to look at music and the piano as a way to enhance certain areas of their mind. I call it Empower Your Science Mind, but also to stimulate areas of the mind that's responsible for creativity. But also, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the general public to what I consider the great masters of classical music. There's something within their music of Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart that is a little bit different today. I think a lot of people have a kind of a perception that classical music is soothing and great for relaxation, but I want to introduce these guys as kind of an energetic way of understanding some of the great pillars of music and what they had to go through to live their lives extraordinarily, but also the amount of music and how they wrote their music. It's just absolutely incredible. So I wanted to break the misconception of classical music with these three titans of classical music. Now, the program, basically what I'll be doing is, again, promoting what I would consider enhancing the analytical mind and the creative mind, and also boost self-esteem. So I'll be performing when I play a little bit of classical music and some of my own music. I'll be projecting it on the big screen along with the slides with information. And I'll also discuss kind of the transformation of what happened to me and how I went from a very shy, narrow person into a little more creative, outgoing person, and became a lot deeper thinking, but also, like I said, also I would consider creative and kind of poetic and musical. And to really get the people to come out, the attendees to come out, but also to make it fun and rewarding, I've partnered up, or at least solicited from a lot of businesses, gift certificates that I'll be giving out during the presentation and the performances. So it's a fun, rewarding way for people to just kind of learn about music and learn my perspective of what music can do, but also to learn about the great masters. Now, first thing I like to tell people is that I'm pretty much self-taught. Only took a couple lessons, and I pretty much learned by watching people perform on the internet, YouTube. So I'm not really I don't consider myself a true musician or a true performer, but more of I guess a performer, but more of an activist of what music can do to the brain. And you don't have to go out in public and play, but what you can do at home to really increase neural stimulation in different areas of the brain. And I like to say my timing really stinks, and I do make mistakes, and sometimes I have a little what I would consider pauses in my memory. So I want to be upfront that I'm not trying to teach people to be a professional. I'm not a professional, but I want to inspire people to look at music and play the piano and kind of increase their artistic expressions to open up new regions of their mind. So about tonight, like I said, using the piano to develop ambidexterity with left-hand focus. I'll talk a little bit about the right-handedness in society, but also how it stimulates new areas of the brain, increased bihemisphere communication between the corpus callosum, and just pretty much use the fun of music, which everyone loves to play music once they learn, and the power of the piano because of the complexity, but also the ambidextrous use. So what I first do is kind of warm up with a little bit of improvisation, kind of loosen up my hands and fingers, but also to give me a little more comfortable. I like to tell people to watch my presentation on, the demonstration on the TV, where I hook up my computer and people can actually see what happens when I depress keys. It's really an exciting way to see what happens and how it looks from kind of a guitar hero presentation. But what I'd like to try to tell the viewers is to imagine what might be happening in my left and right hemispheres of the brain when you see these bars and the keys pressed, and you can see it on the big screen TV. And then I talk about harmonic fractals, about just kind of loosening up, tapping into that creative mind and not worrying about timing, rhythm, or musical academics. And so that's my little warm-up. I do a little improvisation. And then I talk about the transformation, kind of my story of how I used to be before music, and then when I played a little bit more on a more frequent basis, but also listen to some more energetic music by Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart, well, a lot of the classical enlightened artists, and they're really energetic music. And then I talk about how just playing on a regular basis, like a weightlifter would do to increase certain muscle areas. When I started playing on a regular basis, 20 to 30 minutes a day, I noticed a profound difference on how I analyze things, but also being able to tap into some creative aspects of the mind. And then I talk about Johann Sebastian Bach and kind of talk about, or at least touch on some of the amazing points that a lot of historians like to look upon. He is considered one of the great performers, or great composers of the Western music philosophy. And then I'll play a little bit of the simpler pieces. By all means, I know that his music is extraordinary, and I only tap into the very simple pieces, but it should give people a good idea of what happens when I use the left and right hands in a musical way. And so that's my intent, and they can go to the website, and I kind of point them to my website to be able to see a full gamut of the complexity of the music that he wrote. And then I talk about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. I think everyone knows who Mozart is, and he's obviously one of the most extraordinary prodigies out there. His life is extraordinary. I talk about how short his life was, but how much and how prolific he was in writing, and just kind of some of the other, I guess, savant-type mentalities that he had. And so I play Mozart's Piano Sonata number 16. It's a popular one. Hopefully I don't mess up too much, but and then if I have time, I'll play Rondo alla Turca, which a lot of people are familiar with. And again, I will probably make mistakes, but again, it's not about being a performer. It's not about accuracy. It's just about getting the left and right hands working together and increasing the control and sensitivity and development of the left hand to theoretically stimulate more areas of the right hemisphere of the brain. And then I talk about Ludwig van Beethoven. Again, I think he's probably the second most well-known, if not maybe the first well-known classical great. He, along with Mozart, and I talk a little bit about his history, about some amazing feats that he overcame. And so it's fun. A lot of people have heard of Beethoven, but they really haven't known how extraordinary he was. So I'll play Fur-Elise. Everyone knows that. I'll improvise a little bit and then step into that piece. And then I'll play the Pathetique Sonata, a really beautiful piece. And again, these pieces that I play are very simplistic compared to the ones that I would like to introduce the attendees, if they don't know the music, that the complexity and energy of their music is quite different from than today, and I point to the fact that I only play the very simple pieces of their repertoire or their compositions. And then I'll talk a little bit about the kind of the information I've gleaned from studying websites and medical dissertations from doctors about what happens to the brain and stuff about when one plays music and one plays the piano. And I don't want to get too academic on this and bore people, so I'll probably run through this very quickly. And then the premise again of this show is to really increase or empower the science mind, which is I consider the analytical mind, and I talk about kind of my ideas of what the science mind is. And a lot of this again is coming from just having a curiosity of what happens to the brain when one plays music, but also uses ambidexterity. Now the creative spirit, I've ever since I practiced on a regular basis and really developed my left hand dexterity, I've noticed a profound increase in my creative abilities, a lot more poetic. I've got a lot of poetry out there, a lot of multi-dimensional thinking, and also kind of assimilation of various programs, and then being able to project it in a creative, not abstract, but a different way. And I'll talk a little bit about the ambidexterous development. Again, we're right-handed society, 90% of us are. And so developing my left hand the last 3 years with 20 minutes of exercises has really increased certain cognitive functionalities that I like to at least say that it's because of ambidexterous development. And we go through our society, or we go through life a lot of times just kind of using our right hand in a very clunky way. And so developing left hand and right hand, but more so the left hand in a very fine motor movement, and developing sensitivity, and also spontaneity and creativity and artistic expression with the left hand, I believe has developed another area of the right hemisphere of the brain, or the right parietal lobe. And so I'd talk a little bit about ambidexterity, and then how playing music and playing with your left and right hands in a complex manner can increase the communication speed through the corpus callosum, the band that connects the two hemispheres. Now there's there's actually a lot of studies that have or there's a study when they dissect the brain of the pianist and the musician, they notice that there's a considerable mass difference in the corpus callosum than people that don't play music, or people that don't play piano. Then I also talk about the great left-handers throughout society. Again, after developing my left hand over the last couple of years, I definitely saw a increase of analytical and creative abilities, and so I kind of studied what this left-handedness tendency was throughout society. And again, it's 10% are left-handers, and so if you look at the people that were left-handed, or are left-handed, they're extraordinary people, and I talk a little bit about that. I'll highlight like Da Vinci, Beethoven, Mozart, Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla. Marie Curie is an amazing woman, 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. And then Bill Gates, the richest man in the world for 14 years. Mark Zuckerberg, who pretty much created the fastest growing social organism that we've seen. Excuse me. And then Oprah Winfrey, Barack Obama, the last few presidents that have been left-handed. And then for some reason, and I would imagine it's because of the creative aspect of the right, certain areas of the right hemisphere of the brain, a lot of our creative, you could say geniuses of today, artists of today, are left-handed. And so you can I'll list a few of them out there. And there's a lot more listed, but I just want to highlight not just the extraordinary people that we consider in history, but also the ones that people really know, like James Cameron and Robert De Niro and stuff like that. And then I'll play a little bit of my own music. I call it Melody for Emily. It was my first composition I ever created. I composed it for my first daughter, which obviously was a huge moment in my life and created a lot of joy. At the time I was unable to play it, and then when I do play it with it projected on this big screen TV, I'll also do what's called a cadenza, which is just spontaneous improvisation within a theme. Excuse me. And then harmonic fractals, I improvise on kind of a simple theme, and then I expand on it. And this really depends on my comfort level. As I get more comfortable playing in the public, then I'm sure these will increase in complexity. But one is called a Sea of Seasons D major and a minor reflection in A minor, and I talk about that this really isn't about timing, rhythm, or any kind of academic adherence. And then I want to talk about how people can learn. Obviously teachers are the best way to learn. They've got schools, you can learn online, or like me, you can kind of teach yourself. And then the modalities of playing, you got to learn songs, and then exercising them. That's where a lot of people get turned off, but I've found a way that you can actually exercise and make it fun. Creating, and then a big part of tapping into the or at least developing the creative area of the mind is to just kind of let go and improvise with the music and just spontaneously create. And then as I'm done, I'll thank again the people for coming out, the sponsors, the management team, and list out the main sponsors. And this will change obviously as I roll this out on a regular basis in 2020. So thank you. That's the presentation. So if you have any questions, you'll have my information. This is intended to give you an outline of what I'll be talking about at the Night of Music. So thank you for watching. Bye.